Welcome, welcome. My name is Aoife and I am a mind body coach. So I help mostly highly sensitive women to heal themselves from chronic pain, chronic illness, anxiety, and depression using mind body nervous system work. And today I have very special guest, Anna Holtzman, in the house, all the way from Queens. What's up, Queens?
Queen's in the house. Or as they say, well, I don't really say this, but a slogan of Queens is Queens get the money. My husband hates that slogan. He thinks it's weird and cheesy, but
I love that
whatever.
slogan.
So good to see you, Aoife. I'm so happy to speak with you.
Yeah, and actually, I was sitting right in this seat the first time we had a chat. I'll leave the link in the
Oh,
descriptions actually to our first chat. I remember reaching out to you. I was like, she'll never respond. She's probably like, you
that's
know,
hilarious.
yeah. And you were like, no, it's just me. I'm here with my two ginger cats, and I would love to chat.
I don't know if I did this I don't even know if I had my wallpaper up the first time we spoke, but I think like because I started building my Instagram for a little bit. People were like, "Oh, you're famous." I'm like, "No, I'm not." And then I like to show people like the wallpaper ends over there.
Oh, I love that. It's such a nice backing. Yeah,
Oh,
for sure. Someone said, how did you get that famous woman to talk to you?
are you serious? I was like, "You want to talk to me? Thank you so much." And I was so happy to meet you.
Well, it was the beginning of a very beautiful friendship and connection for sure.
Yeah. I'd love to
Um,
go back just to see how long ago it was that we met.
yeah. Well, I'll leave the link to our talk in the descriptions and we can check the date.
Yeah.
So, what we're going to talk about today is I was saying to Anna just before we got on this call that I hear so many people say that they got results, they healed something or had these big breakthroughs and this big relief and this like, back into getting their lives back in some way, and then they have a relapse.
Yeah.
And so Anna and I are going to share a bit about um how you might navigate that or think about that experience differently or use that experience to actually um pick up more momentum with your healing.
Yes. And I'll just take a brief minute to say because I am not famous and most people watching this probably are seeing me for the first time or if you are, my name is Anna Holtzman. I live in New York City in the borough of Queens, and I work as a licensed therapist as well as a chronic pain recovery coach. So Aoife and I do very similar related work, and that's how we found each other. Um, and I also get this a lot from clients and just people who write to me, and it's a completely understandable thing that people say like, oh, I made a little bit of progress or I made a lot of progress with mind body healing. And I, in some cases, like I made my symptoms decreased or even my symptoms went away. And now I'm having a relapse. And the sense is like, oh, actually, none of my progress meant anything because now I'm failing and I must be doing something wrong. And now I need to start at square one. I was down the wrong track. And as soon as you brought up this topic, I was like, I have something to say about this because the way that I think about what we refer to relapses is like, say you are in a relationship, like I am in a relationship with my husband. And in the beginning of our relationship, we had a very high conflict relationship for the first, well, we had our honeymoon period, of course, for like 3 months. And then we fell into a very high conflict cycle that lasted for about a year and a half. We went to couples therapy. We listened to podcasts together. We were like, kind of like the way you and I think, approached the mind body symptoms when we discovered mind body healing. We read all the books, we did the courses, you probably like worked with some coaches or, listened to coaches, whatever. So my husband and I had this problem that was we were fighting. And so we did all the stuff to try to fix it. And the thing is, in a sense, we did fix it because we got to the other side of that just chronic conflict period where we felt confused and scared and freaked out and we thought we were going to have to break up. And we got so much better. No one in their right mind would think that we never fight anymore, right? So that's my analogy to this like relapse thing.
I love that because it actually breaks my heart when I hear people say that they think that it's, oh, it doesn't work, it didn't work for me, or it's failing. It breaks my heart because I think like, no, please don't think that, or don't give up. Because for sure for me, I actually just never used that language on myself. I never felt, every time I had all kinds of like symptoms arise, I never thought for once, maybe I had like doubts and moments of like what's
Yeah.
going on, but for sure I kind of just knew that, whether intuitively or because I really grasped the mind body healing, that there was something going on. It's
Yeah.
more for me that, oh, there's something going on, there's something else going on. There's this symptom, and but it's telling me that there's something else going on. And even though I didn't like the symptom, I wasn't like feeling all like, oh, I'm just here to learn. No, I would be upset and frustrated, and I would feel the despair and everything that went with it. But I knew it was always a signal to go and look at something else. And I didn't always know then what it was that I had to look at and what was causing it. But over time now, I've gotten so much better. And one thing that I reached out to you once about, and which helped so much, was this like shame spiraling that we would share a little bit about. And when I like post online and there's all this personal stuff, and then you're doing all this business stuff, and I was raised as an Irish Catholic girl. You keep yourself small, and you don't ask people to do anything, even when even when you desperately need it, let alone asking people to share your content or whatever. All those things for me were causing like what someone else might call like, oh, it's a relapse. It's like just
Yes.
causing all these symptoms and this like depression. Oh my God, this depression. And when I reached out to you, um and I was sharing with you, it just having those very short conversations with you just unraveled so much. And then moving forward, as I would be going into the same experience of like, okay, I'm doing another launch, I'm putting myself out there more, I'm going to ask people to share my content. I was preempting. I was like, oh, this is when the shame spiral and the depression hits in. And I would
Mm.
like even say to you, hey, like, oh, could you share this shame spiral? And just naming it and knowing
Yeah.
it meant that it impacted me a lot less. So in a way, I'm kind of just sharing the beauty of when you can start to connect the dots. Okay, what's causing this nervous system dysregulation that's triggered all these different symptoms, new symptoms or old symptoms, whatever it is. And when you can get to the root, and then you can find a way to navigate that situation um with more self-compassion, with more support, with some tools, whatever it is, then these life circumstances don't impact you in that way as much. And
Yeah.
side effect, is that you actually step out and you do things like maybe get into relationships, or have difficult conversations, or start businesses, or pursue your creative passions. It's like that's just the side effect then of doing that. I love when you share like the side effects of the work.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the you know, everyone who works with the chronic pain and chronic symptoms has their different language, and there's, and that's great because different language works for different people. So this is not a knock on someone else's language, but for some people, the language that really helps them and works for them is to say that the symptoms or the pain is like an error message from your nervous system. And for some people, that is, that message works great because it takes the fear down, and then the symptoms can calm down. For me personally, and this doesn't have to be the case for anyone else, but for me personally, I really don't like that language that the pain is an error message, because to me, it's a really useful message. Like there's no error about it. The only error is how I might interpret it if I'm in a high fear state. So if I'm in a heightened fear state, I might interpret a headache as like, there's my body is broken, or I'm a terrible person that I allowed this to happen, or, all these negative self-defeating interpretations. But the real message that that headache holds is always something that I can really benefit from, because the message might be something like, gosh, I really want to, put myself out there and like share my voice, and that's triggering the fear that I have about being judged and disliked and all that stuff. And gosh, if I just look at this with curiosity and the intention of working through it, that can really change my life in a wonderful, like, it can help me grow, and it can lead to all these great things. Similarly, I see symptoms as just like one manifestation of um when stress comes up and we go to battle with ourselves instead of supporting ourselves. So similarly, like, that might manifest in a headache for me. It might manifest in I'm like getting really snippy with my husband and we're like fighting a lot. And that's a signal to me to say, when I'm scared, I might say, oh, our relationship is broken and I'm with the wrong person. But if I can look at it with more steadiness and curiosity, I might say, "Oh, gee, we're fighting more than usual. Like what's going on here? Is there some need that I have that I'm not expressing directly?" And then I might find like, "Oh, I feel like we're not having enough fun together, and I really want to have more fun." And then that can lead to our life improving.
Oh my God, like the magic of this, because in the past for me, I would just be like Googling about the headache and looking for like different supplements about the headache. And so for me, it was, I had fibromyalgia and IBS and
Yeah.
many, many, many symptoms. Um, so just how you describe, like I can give an example of that also. The past few days, I have felt like I've been kind of like irritated by people, and yeah, just being able to look at my own experience has, it's just freed up so much energy. And yeah, the symptoms can really distract you and hold you back in that way from some really important growth. And well, one of my biggest fears ever, was being disliked and, people not approving of me, especially online. So when I started the business, it was really, really like triggering of so many symptoms, and I could have been like, oh, I'm a failure. Actually, this doesn't work. I'm like suddenly like completely inflamed with symptoms. I'm gonna like just, go back to the way that I was, and I'm not gonna do anything. But I just knew um I actually just knew what was going on. So even though, I wasn't sleeping, I would post it and I wouldn't sleep, and then I'd take it down, and like it was just so intense. But I knew I really wanted to feel free in my voice.
Yeah.
And that's something I had felt for a long time in my life. in my a long time in my life. And I knew that the symptoms were manifesting like as a result of a dysregulated nervous system, of fear or a belief, a broken belief or whatever. So I kept going. I kept going, deactivating the fear, or soothing the fear of the symptoms, knowing the truth of what they are, and working with the root cause that was coming up. And yeah, I have been so triggered by having the business, and
Same.
all the things. I used to be like, just post something, all the likes, and all the likes start disappearing, and the people start disappearing, and they don't know what's she doing, what's she talking about. And for an Irish person, a village mentality, like it was gnarly, but I just kept going because I desperately wanted to feel like I free of, like, that freedom to be able to be myself.
Yes. I mean, I so relate to that. And I talk about this a lot because I see it in myself, I see it in my clients that I feel like there's I mean, you could talk about this in so many ways, but there's roughly two types of triggers as I see it. There's the triggers where the pain or the symptom is telling you there's something you need to remove from your life. Like, you hear this story so many times from so many people that they were in an abusive relationship. They had terrible symptoms throughout the entire abusive relationship. As soon as they broke up with that person, the symptoms disappeared. So that's, I think, what we recognize more easily. But another very classic common story is we go for our passion, we use our voice, we, start a business, take up more space in some way, and suddenly the symptoms just like pile onto us. And so the first thought, understandably, is, oh, I need to stop doing my business, or I need to stop sharing my art, or I need to stop sharing my voice because that, I need to break up with my passion because then the symptoms will go away. But actually, they just get worse when we do that because what we really need to break up with are all of those fearful, self-defeating, self-critical beliefs that come up when we're sharing our voice. That's the part that's creating or that's triggering those symptoms. And I think no matter what our cultural background or our gender or whatever, it's like everyone who experiences this, we've got something in our history that got embedded into our nervous system that's telling us if you put yourself out there, you're going to be laughed at or punished or people won't like you. And like all that fear comes up. And I deal with it all the time. And it's why it's so important to me to have friends like you, because all of this self-work is really crucial, but also like trying to like pep myself up all on my own is not helpful. Like isolating with it is not helpful. It's just so amazingly comforting and healing to connect with a friend who's like, oh yeah, you're not crazy. Like I can relate. It's
Totally.
normal.
Hold on 1 minute. Oh, that's right. Completely. And actually, I hear some of my clients sometimes before I was doing the group program, when I was just doing one-to-ones, um, also find that isolation like difficult because maybe their husbands, their children, their neighbors, their friends have not heard of Mind Body.
Yeah.
And if I was looking for comfort from from people who were not doing this, when I was like being triggered, starting my business, putting my voice out there, that person might say to me like, yeah, like, what are you doing? Stop posting online, like stop doing this, especially if you're like not sleeping. So
Yeah.
it's so important to like know the right people or have the right kind of people to share this journey with. So finding, yeah, being part of these mind body communities, or having these different group programs that I know you have as well, where you can have this shared experience with people is so valuable. And that's what I get also from our friendship and our connection. Just like when I say something to you and you're like, yeah, man, me too. Like it's just like poof, like it takes the edge off it so much. And you're like, yeah, I went through that, or I know that experience. And it really, really takes the edge off it. And yeah,
It really does. And for me, I'm guessing you probably relate to this. Like it doesn't matter which one of us reached out to each other. Like if you reached out to me or if I reached out to you in a moment of, the shame spiral, like whether I'm asking for support or giving support, it builds my own confidence because when I'm like right now in this moment in conversation with you, I'm like, of course I believe all this stuff and I feel great and I feel, I have no doubt that, you know, sharing my voice is the right thing to be doing because it feels good. But as soon as we hang up the call and I'm off by myself, those fears can so easily come up. So connecting is just so helpful.
totally. And those, like, also because like the majority of people still in those fears, if you're if, or in those belief systems that were programmed into our nervous system in the first place. So it is scary to be breaking free from your family belief systems, from your cultural
Mm.
belief systems, whatever is ingrained into you. So when you start to step out of that, then it can feel really, really scary. So having someone or around who can cheer you on and just kind of reflect to you, yeah, it's okay to try this out. It's okay, like, to break free a little bit from these different kinds of fears that are holding you back and stopping you. I always say, like, to my clients that it's in my experience, this journey of healing my body has been a journey of coming back to myself, my most authentic version of myself.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, whatever is holding you back, each of us, from kind of just being ourselves. And it doesn't have to be going for a passion or starting a business or going traveling. Maybe it's just like, yeah, feeling like you have permission to take breaks, or to, like, I don't know, it can be anything. Like, everyone's so individual and so different. um but it can feel really scary when you've been on auto drive and you've been doing all these things, keeping everything afloat. For me, the people pleaser and the perfectionism and just the caretaker and all these parts of me just keeping everything, I was on auto drive, and it felt really scary to start pulling those things apart. And it does affect the people around you. Like, they're used to you being a certain way.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah. That makes me think of another thing that I think is like a common, I don't know, just a common thing that comes up as part of this process is I'll hear people say, now I realize that having unsupportive people around me has made it difficult for me to heal. But now I feel like I can't heal unless I get rid of everyone in my life. And that feels scary, or I don't want to separate from everyone in my life. So I don't know what to do. Does that come up with your clients also?
Definitely. People always ask me, like, oh, will I need to change my job? Do I need to break up with this partner? Do I need to change my house? Everyone, like, talks a lot about mold. And I tell
Yeah.
everyone I'm
Mhm.
back in my parents' house that is full of black mold, and I healed while I was in this house with my parents. And
Yeah.
I'm fine. So I always say to people, it's like an inside job, and to just go inside first, and anything that needs to change will become clear to you, like, only when you get that like strength, you build that strength within yourself, you start to recognize those patterns and broken beliefs that are holding you back. You build some self-compassion, and you find your voice a bit as well, right? That's what really started to change things for me. I started to have say things to people and have conversations that I would have been terrified to have before. And that's when because it's probably different for everyone. Some people, maybe you do need to get rid of people in your life, I don't know, or maybe you do need to move house, or maybe you don't, but it's always going to come from shifting that internal world first.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. That's really cool hearing about like I healed in the house where I have, my parents, and regardless of what our relationship with our parents is like, there's going to be triggers there,
Yeah.
in the black mold, and you still were able to heal in that environment. I think that's really inspiring. Um, I'm thinking about for me just this, you know, as we progress in life, we're always we're growing, or our spirit is wanting to grow into new areas, and then that new growth is going to be scary because it's new and it's unknown, and so that's going to bring up more of our stuff to work through, and it might bring up symptoms with it. And so like you, I am on this entrepreneurial journey at the moment, and bringing it back to the people in your life stuff. My husband is extremely supportive. So it's not about him being unsupportive, but he hasn't consumed all of the same self-help stuff that I have, really. Um, and so he hasn't steeped himself in all the stuff about, like, if you're overly perfectionist, it's driven by fear and you'll never share your stuff with the world if you are waiting for it to be perfect. It's better to just share and you can keep iterating. And so sometimes I'll show him, like, oh, look at this web page that I made, or this podcast that I recorded, and I'm all excited. I'm about to share it. And him coming from a place of good intention, he'll be like, oh, well, you could tweak that and tweak that and tweak that, because he's very perfectionist and detail oriented. And I just start getting so stressed out and crushed. And then I'm like, oh, I guess I just won't share that with the world at all. And I'm like, I love him. I definitely don't need to get him out of my life to grow in this area. But, maybe there are certain things I'll share with him and certain things I'll share with Aoife, or, like, some other friend that's on this similar path and gets this stuff in the same way that I'm getting it.
This, what you're talking about right now, is something that changed my life, and I don't know at what point this happened, but I started to become really discerning
Yeah.
about who to share what with and how to share it. I don't know. It's like I just got very skilled up in this. Whereas I used to like kind of, yeah, just like, you know, maybe talk to my parents about certain things. Well, I'll use this as an example, right? My parents. I learned that I just became very discerning about when I'm sharing things about my life with them, that I would wait till I was at a certain point where I had discussed it with people who really could like support me with the process.
Yeah.
And when I was really sure in myself, then I would chat with them and the chat would go really well. Whereas before I got to this realization, I would bring things to them, and they're full of their own fears and their own
Yes.
like intentions for me and ideas for me and all kinds of things, right? So if I was kind of freaking out about something and I brought it to them, ping, 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 they would freak out, fight with them, da, 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 nothing would happen. And it's
Yeah.
like, I don't know how I started to realize this, but this has made things not only with our relationship so much better, but it means I can receive the support that they do have for me. And I'm fortunate to have parents like that. But I just became really discerning in how to relate. Is it like how to relate to people and how to get the support? Whereas before, when I was full of symptoms and I was in a lot of conflict with people, and I felt like no one had my back and no one
Yeah.
understood me, and felt so misunderstood. And and I didn't know how, I didn't feel supported by anyone. And now I feel like so loved and supported, but it's not because they've all changed or I've got
Right.
rid of some people and got some new people. It's actually like I kind of learned, just came to understand myself so much better. And it is directly related to symptoms in my experience, because the less stress and fear and conflict I have in my life, then the less symptoms I have, and the more energy, and so then the less stress that I have in my life, less symptoms, and the more energy I have. And now I feel so much more love and support than I ever did before, but it's only through my own understanding myself and having a broader perspective on situations. Whereas, in the past, I really did, like, I just blamed people, I hated people, they're the worst, and fight back and all this. This was just how I lived. And I was really sick in my body with different symptoms. So I love that. I love what you shared. That was a big change for me.
I love what you shared so much. And there's like an aspect that I can very much relate to in my own way with my own parents. What I was like writing down, that like sense of not feeling supported. I spent so many years, and I don't think this was um I don't want to say like, oh, I was such an idiot to spend so many years waiting for them to validate me. Not at all. I mean, I just didn't, I hadn't found a different way yet until I finally did. And there were a lot of books and people and um, things that helped me finally find a different way. But I spent so many years waiting for my parents specifically to validate my feelings about ways in which they had hurt me as a kid, you know? And it seems obvious looking back, but it just was not obvious to me for years and years that like they'd be the last people who'd be capable of validating those feelings for me, because my feelings about, you know, their treatment of me trigger so much stuff for them. It puts them into fear and self-defense and all these things. And, you know, maybe by some miracle they might be able to work through that stuff, but like I have no control over that. Like they might never see it the same way that I see it. And I have so much more ability and power to validate my feelings about that stuff. And I know it sounds, but once I realized that and started doing it for myself, and for me, I did it through journaling. I would have these dialogue journaling sessions with myself where I would let the hurt child part of me just vent all her feelings, and then my adult part would just validate the crap out of her. And I couldn't believe how powerful it was, and how after doing that for probably months, I my relationship with my parents became so much easier. And I'm not saying like everyone should do exactly this and they'll have a great relationship with their parents. Like for some people, not having a relationship with their parents is the healthiest thing for them. We've all got different situations. But my experience happened to be that my relationship with them got so much easier because I wasn't looking toward them for something that I couldn't get from them.
I love this. I love this. And for me, when I started to be able to like basically hold space for myself, like whereas before, like you, I was like always looking to them and frustrated with them. And when I started to be able to like hold space for myself and all my own inner world, I started to feel like I was growing up.
Mhm.
And I feel like even though I don't have a house and I don't have like a husband and many of the like or mortgage or many of the like conventional adulting things that are out there, I feel like the more I do this work, I just feel like I just grow up a lot. And I don't mean that in like a condescending way or anything to anyone at all, but for me it feels it that's just it makes me feel really, really good, like because before doing this work, I was just having the same arguments with my parents for sure. And I had the same issues. I had the same health issues, I had the same career issues, I had the same relationship issues. I was having the same like bad relationship, over and over and over again. And it's maddening, right? Like you do feel, of course you feel mad. Like it's
Yeah.
maddening to be living like that. And then when I started to be able to hold space for my own inner world, things started to dramatically change in my outer world. The relationship with my parents dramatically changed. My dating world changed. My health, started to improve dramatically. And so I do love this feeling of like kind of growing up or growing in wisdom, and feeling like the problems that I felt were so stuck uh, are some of them like, problems of the past, or now they just sneak up. You know, I can see living back here with my parents, I can see there's this little version of me. I'm going to call her like rude bitch Aoife. Because like there's this little version, and she that used to be like my whole um like it was she took over a lot of me, like when, and I can see she sneaks back in, and I just want to be like rude to my parents, and or whoever. But it's so cool for me to see that she's still there, but she's quite faded, or I can see her, and she doesn't have control over my actions, because I was really angry with my parents. I wanted to like punish them all the time, so I was just constantly, it was just a habit at one point to just relate to them in this like very like aggressive, passive aggressive way all of the time. And then when I started to change, actually I mentioned this, when I started to change and become like a bit softer around them and a little more like lovey-dovey, which wasn't like I would never been before, I would be like that, and then I would recoil, and
Yeah.
I would go back, because like you don't know, is it safe? Is it
Yeah.
safe for me to be relaxed, and to be in this way? Um, so it's cool for me now, just like, a few years down the line of doing this work, to see that the predominant version of me is now this lovey-dovey, like more fun and joyful, softer version. And then the little like, the little other version of me is, she's just like hanging around, and but I can just see her, and even if I am rude or whatever, I can just have so much compassion for myself, and hold space for that too.
Yeah. Gosh, I like as you were talking, our conversations always go like this. I'm like, oh, that makes me think about this part of my experience that relates to that. Like one of the symptoms that was not what brought me into mind body healing, but it is something that has resolved through it. As I used to get chronic sinus infections, and it was like a huge part of my life actually. Um, and I would always, like run to the doctor. Not that you shouldn't go to the doctor. I mean, when you have a sinus infection, it can be very helpful to go to a doctor and get an antibiotic. But I would run in a panic to the doctor, and I'd call my mom, and my mom has a lot of like health anxiety, and you know, she would respond in a very fear-fueled way, but how I was seeing it was like, oh, my mom knows best. She's the authority. I have to listen to everything she says. I was seeing her as like this knowledgeable authority, and I would be putting myself in danger if I didn't follow her advice. And what I realize now is like I was the the entity that I was seeing as an authority was my mother's fear. And so I was letting someone else's fear be the authority that was guiding me. And of course, I was getting sick over and over and over again because I was so overtaken by this fear and this stress that the fear puts your body into.
Completely, yeah. And the hopelessness,
Yeah.
the helplessness when you're,
Helplessness.
mm,
And I think, of course, I'd feel like angry at her for the same time. It's kind of like needing her, but angry at her and these days, I feel like when I hear her going into her health anxiety stuff, I'm just like, I just ignore it. And not even I don't have to feel angry about it because it has no control over me anymore.
I love that. It's like you're more when you're, I just feel like when you're in that like helpless, scared, like I don't know what this is place, it's so stressful, and other people's anxieties have so much scope to like get in there, and
Yes.
you latch onto them because you'd bloody well latch onto anything. Like no
Yes.
one's told you what's causing all this stuff. Like it's affecting, impacting every part of your life. Like why wouldn't you be in that stressed out state? Why wouldn't you be like that? And you cling on to these, then other people's anxieties getting in, and everyone has a different opinion and anxiety. And
And you confuse their what's actually their anxiety. If they're speaking it loudly, you think it's confidence, and you grab onto their anxiety thinking it's a lifeline, and it's actually the opposite.
completely. And then through this journey that like you and I help people with, and that we've been through ourselves, like you just, I've heard, was it someone on the channel? I don't know. Someone said anyway, it's like you get into your own driver's seat. And that's what I'm
Yeah.
hearing you say now, because I'm the same now. People can say all kinds of mad or anxiety driven, fear driven, or they may be seemingly confident things around me, but it just has no, like, it's like it doesn't scare me, it doesn't get in. I know what's going on, and if something is genuinely interesting to me, I'll go, I'm not, I'm listening, like you as well, I'm listening, I'm open, but can't get in. And it's really sweet actually, because when people share, their different health anxieties or situations they're going through, it can, you know it can, like you were sharing, ignore it for myself, so I'm protected, but can really just like allow people to be as they are.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past I was like, oh, I'm taking magnesium and you should try magnesium. I was always like throwing
Right.
whatever I was throwing at myself, I was like throwing it at them. And I was also doing this with my parents all the time. Okay, you need to stop eating sugar, you need to stop doing this. And now it's just so much more relaxing for me, and I'm sure for any of my friends and family, that I'm just not like throwing things at them anymore. I can just let things be, because I don't feel so pulled in every direction.
Yeah. I Something that's coming to my mind is like I want to say this to normalize and validate that getting to a place of greater ease in these kinds of relationships is, for me anyway, was not just like a calm, gentle, beautiful process whatsoever. Like, in order to get to a place of feeling like my mom's fears do not have control of me, I had to first allow myself to feel rageful at her. And I actually stopped talking to her for an entire year. And I was extremely combative toward her for a while. Like, it's not something I feel proud of, but it's also not something that I regret. And I'm very, very glad that I went through a process to, whatever that process looked like, because my life improved on the other side of it. I finally got into a healthy relationship on the other side of it. My health started to change on the other side of it, but it looked, very messy and even rude and, like just chaotic for a while toward getting there. And also with uh like I don't recommend anyone do this or not do this. Everyone has to have their own path. But for me, I spent, I think, a couple of years just not going to any medical doctors at all because I had felt so mind controlled by, the fearful aspects of the medical model. And I just didn't want to go to a doctor and feel overtaken by that, the influence that they have. So I just completely stopped going to any medical doctors for a couple of years. Now, and again, I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do this for anyone else, but for me, I've started to get certain things checked out on a, more regular basis, but I've taken the time to get more confident in myself to the point where I feel like I'm comfortable hearing whatever they have to say and then filtering it through my own judgment and discernment.
I love everything you shared, and it's so good to normalize the messiness of this journey as well. I remember reaching out to you before about boundaries, putting boundaries in, and you were like telling me something like it's like opening a bottle of champagne or something.
Yeah.
And that it's just going to be messy, and that really, really, really helped me. And I also love what you shared, that you decided that it would be healthy for you to take a break from going to doctors. And I did different things like that with like supplements, because I was obsessed with supplements. And for sure, yeah, it's just different for everyone. But I know some people do also feel this like addiction to going to doctors. I
Yeah.
get a lot of clients that are just like, they just go to another doctor every other day, because you're so you're in such distress and you just really want someone to have the answer. And I really get why someone would be in that in that place.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I definitely have had some clients who've been just jumping around every day, going to a different doctor, calling someone for just looking for that relief, looking for that bit of information. So, and then they come across, Dr. Schubiner or Dr. Dave Clark, or someone who can help to steer them in the uh, maybe a better, healthier direction.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that too. And when I see it, there's an impulse in me that wants to say like, oh, stop going to like a million doctors. But I I never want to be like in the in battle with the client, because that's not going to help them at all. I want to be in a supportive energy with them. And so, I might just encourage them to take a beat, ask their own questions about things, consider different possibilities, but to continue following their own intuition. And their intuition may or may not, but it may shift over time.
Sure. Um, so yeah, it's messy, it's chaotic, it looks different for everyone, but it's definitely a journey back to yourself, and finding a less stressful way to be yourself in this world. So yeah, I hope this conversation has like helped someone with their journey, and you're so welcome to, I'll leave all of Anna's information so you can get in touch with her and download any of her little things that she has available. And you're welcome to also get in touch with me or check out the other interviews on this channel. And yeah, is there anything that you want to share, Anna, before we wrap it up?
Thank you so much for inviting me into this conversation. And my takeaway is find a friend that you can share the journey with. And you may find more and more friends as you go. But if you sense a connection with someone, reach out to them. You never know. You might be a really important part of each other's healing path.
I love that idea. Absolutely love it. That's anyone's homework for the day. Reach out to someone who's also going through this journey, because it's so invaluable. And I always tell my clients that they're geniuses, like that they're pioneers, that you're doing something that at the moment is not the majority way of thinking and doing and healing. So if you can find another genius friend, pioneer friend, then to share this journey with, it's gonna be really helpful. But I think in like 10 years time, it will just be so normal. Everyone will think like, with the doctors, we'll all be mind body informed, um, and it'll be a bit of a different world. So, so yeah, thank you so much,
Thank you,
Anna. It's
Eva.
so nice
Big
to see
hugs to
you.
you.
Yeah, big hugs to you and your ginger cats.
Um,
And I'll leave all of Anna's information so you can check out her podcast and all of her other cool bits and bobs on Instagram. She's doing amazing work. And we will chat to you. I will chat to you again.
I'll see you soon.
See you.